Knockdown power. The idea promises cinematic physics. A heavy or fast bullet strikes, and a body flies backward. Magazine columns and campfire retellings reinforced it for generations, because dramatic collapses are memorable and slow tipovers are not. John Pandoro Taylor's mid-century knockout tables weighted frontal area and mass, while Roy Weatherby promoted very high velocity and so-called shock. Those narratives offered tidy explanations for why one cartridge seemed to topple game while another did not. And they persisted because each hunter eventually witnesses an animal that drops instantly and another that runs despite an apparently identical hit. Controlled observation never supported it. Professional veterinarians conducting buffalo culls documented animals shot alike through the heart-lung area. Some fell immediately, others stayed on their feet for seconds. Postmortems revealed ruptured cerebral vessels in the instantaneous cases, consistent with timing near the peak of a heartbeat when arterial pressure was highest. That mechanism explains the occasional light-switch collapse without invoking mystical impact force. Field logs from experienced writers show the same variability across cartridges and species. A .300 Magnum that failed to topple a deer on the spot, a .375 that produced an 80-yard dash, and a .22 caliber centerfire that caused an immediate drop when the path intersected the central nervous system. Physics is aligned with the anatomy. Momentum exchange from a bullet is small compared to body mass. What incapacitates is disruption of brain, spine, or oxygen supply. Heart-lung hits commonly allow a brief interval of mobility before blood pressure loss causes collapse. Neck or brain shots end it immediately because vertebrae or neural tissue are severed. Old-timers favoring neck shots with .30-30 and .35 Remington rifles at close range observed frequent instant drops, which looked like hit-like-a-truck performance while actually being simple CNS interruption.
Revolvers never jam. The reputation was earned in an era when many early semi-automatics were finicky and magazines inconsistent. Wheel guns tolerated neglect better than some of their contemporaries and looked on screen and at the counter like machines that would always work if the trigger moved. That impression hardened into a slogan. Mechanisms still obey tolerances. Ammunition issues can stop a cylinder. High primers drag on the recoil shield and prevent rotation. Unburned powder flakes under the extractor star keep it from seating fully. The next stroke feels like a seized bearing. Light, small revolvers with stout loads can experience bullet pull, where inertia walks a projectile forward and noses it into the forcing cone. None of this is theoretical. Maintenance explains another share. Crud in the cylinder window and under the star, loose side plate screws that shift timing surfaces, and dried lubricant at the hand and ratchet all show up as heavy or intermittent double-action pull. Competitive shooters have watched a carelessly serviced yoke screw back out mid-string and turn a reload into a parts spill across the firing line. Damage completes the picture. A bent ejector rod scrapes and binds. A cylinder slammed open and shut misaligns the crane. A drop on the cylinder lip peens an edge and drags on rotation. Internal components are not immune either. Transfer bars, firing pins, and mainsprings are consumable over long service lives, and unusual loads can provoke oddities like internal locks tripping in certain models. Pump shotguns don't need aiming. Cinema and games created the illusion of a hallway-wide pattern that forgives imprecise pointing. The sawed-off trope strengthened it by associating very short barrels with dramatic spread, and anecdotes circulated about loads that covered the room. The conclusion followed. A pump gun only needs to be pointed in the general direction. Pattern boards say otherwise. At typical indoor distances around 10 yards, common birdshot and buckshot loads from cylinder bore pumps often print on the order of 8 to 12 inches. A couple of inches off the intended line can miss a vital zone entirely. Rifled barrels and certain rifled chokes can increase spread, and very short rifled tubes can open patterns more than smoothbores, which likely fed the original impression. Modern flight control wads reverse the story, keeping 00 buck remarkably tight well past living room distance and maintaining coherent patterns into the mid-20s and beyond. Empirical trials comparing long barrel pumps with compact bird's head models reinforce that aiming remains mandatory. Short overall length changes handling and sighting radius. It does not create a cone of inevitability. When shooters intentionally place the muzzle between two targets at close range, most pellets strike where the muzzle is aimed rather than dividing neatly between them.
The .22 LR is too weak to be effective. The cartridge's training role in mild manners invited underestimation. Generations learned basic marksmanship with it, hunted small game, and associated it with air gun levels of disruption. Popular media seldom framed it as a serious round. That familiarity bred a false sense of safety. History contradicts the claim. Bella Twin, an indigenous trapper in Alberta, used a .22 long, weaker than the .22 long rifle, to drop an enormous grizzly with exacting placement through thin cranial bone, then followed with insurance shots. The incident is singular but illustrative. Anatomy and location trump caliber under very specific conditions. Law enforcement training cites the fatal shooting of a trooper by a .22 LR Derringer round that found an unarmored gap, even as the assailant survived multiple .357 Magnum wounds. In another well-documented event, a .22 LR bullet that ricocheted off a vehicle still penetrated beneath a future president's arm and created life-threatening injuries. Modern engineering delivers further evidence. Purpose-built rim-fire defensive loads with flat-nosed bullets are designed to maximize straight-line penetration rather than expansion. In properly prepared gelatin from short barrels, some of these rounds can reach depths commonly referenced for effective disruption of vital structures. While rimfire ignition remains less reliable than centerfire, those penetration results contradict the idea that the cartridge cannot reach organs of consequence. Context is important. The cartridge is not a powerhouse. It is a low-pressure rimfire designed for economy and training. Rimfire priming is inherently more variable than boxer prime centerfire cases, and platform sensitivity to fouling and ammunition variances is real. Within those constraints, it remains fully capable of fatal injury when placement and path allow. The safe lesson is not to elevate it beyond its design, and not to dismiss it as a toy. Silencers make guns whisper quiet. Fiction needed a visual and auditory shorthand for stealth, and the threaded cylinder on a pistol became the prop. A soft puffed on a film set conveys proximity without alerting the extras in the next room. Games and novels adopted the same trope, and it stuck. Suppression addresses only one of three acoustic sources. A suppressor cools and slows propellant gases as they exit the muzzle. It does not stop the noise of the action cycling or the sonic crack of a supersonic bullet in flight. Semi-automatic slides move, lock, unlock, eject, and strip with mechanical clatter. If the projectile crosses the sound barrier, the miniature sonic boom remains. Measured levels confirm the practical effect. Good muzzle devices can drop blast into ranges that are far less punishing to hearing and more manageable indoors. They do not turn a service pistol into a whisper. On some straight blowback pistols with slide lock capability, shooters can lock the action and fire subsonic ammunition for a much quieter single shot, then manually cycle. Follow-up shots are deliberate rather than rapid. Integrally suppressed rifles that vent and cool gas within an extended volume offer further reduction, yet the result is still audibly a firearm rather than a theatrical hiss. Surface coatings on bullets that were once marketed for bore lubrication do not create silent ammunition and do not grant tactile armor-defeating properties. Soft armor behavior depends on velocity, core material, and shape, not a slick exterior. Modern suppressors are valuable for hearing safety and for reducing muzzle flash and disturbance. They are tools that make training safer and indoor work more manageable. The movie depiction is a narrative device, not a technical description. AK-47s are inaccurate junk guns. Internet shorthand turned a mixed reputation into a blanket statement. Decades of mass production under varying quality regimes, crude irons on many examples, inconsistent optics mounting, and piles of budget steel case ammunition
all combined to generate large group sizes in casual hands. That experience circulated as a meme. Comparisons under controlled conditions tell a different story. When shooters mount solid optics to modern, well-built AK pattern rifles with good barrels and test them at 100 yards with known, consistent ammunition, group sizes commonly narrow into the 2 to 3 inch range. The best examples do better, and that result aligns with what service rifles can reasonably deliver with non-match loads. Ergonomics and sighting systems do affect the ease with which a shooter can approach that mechanical potential. So casual range outcomes still show the advantage of rifles with longer sight radius and more familiar control layouts. The AR-15 is a weapon of war. The phrase migrated from political speech into everyday description, but it conflates lineage with function. Assault rifle, as a historical term, traces to the German Sturmgewehr, literally storm rifle, named for the 1944 STG-44, and intended to equip Sturm formations for direct front-of-line assaults rather than flanking. The concept paired an intermediate cartridge with selective fire, so troops could control recoil in bursts while carrying more ammunition, filling the gap between submachine guns and full-power rifles. By that historical definition, an assault rifle is selective fire and intermediate caliber. The civilian AR-15 family is a semi-automatic development descended from the same tree, but it lacks the fire control features that define the military category. Confusion is understandable. The silhouette is similar to service rifles, and the modularity that makes the platform adaptable in civilian hands also makes it easy for images to blur. High-profile crimes involving AR pattern rifles amplified the rhetorical use of weapon of war, and repetition did the rest. Technical reality is straightforward. A semi-automatic AR-15 fires 1 round per trigger press. The military M16 and M4 line incorporate burst or automatic modes in addition to semi-automatic. That fire control distinction is not cosmetic. It defines role and capability. Civilian configurations span lightweight varmint rifles, match guns, pistol-caliber carbines, and general-purpose carbines, all built around a modular upper-lower receiver system that accepts different barrels, bolts, and magazines for specific tasks. The fine point is not about morality. It is about categories and mechanisms. The design's history intersects with military development, but the semi-automatic civilian rifle is not a selective fire infantry weapon by function.
Bigger handgun caliber automatically means more stopping power. The intuition made sense before modern bullet design and standardized testing. A larger diameter looks like a larger hole. Early autoloaders and revolvers carried blunt, heavy projectiles at modest velocities, and some produced dramatic wounds in isolated accounts. Those impressions became habit, then tradition. Quantitative standards reframed the question. Penetration, sufficient to reach vital organs in a wide range of angles and through intermediate barriers, matters more than frontal diameter alone. Contemporary jacketed hollow points are engineered to expand reliably within a velocity window while still reaching those depths. The result is that 9mm service loads from duty-length barrels frequently meet penetration criteria and expand to consistent diameters while offering controllable recoil and higher capacity than larger bores. Barrel length complicates the picture. A hollow point that works perfectly at service velocities may expand too quickly in a very short barrel and underpenetrate. In small pocket pistols, flat point or non-expanding designs that favor straight-line penetration can perform more predictably. Conversely, in service pistols, bonded and mechanically locked JHPs hold together through barriers and maintain effective depth. Non-expanding solid copper designs with fluted noses add a separate mechanism. They create significant fluid displacement and permanent cavities without classical expansion, and in some institutional tests, they demonstrated wound channels comparable to traditional designs, while tracking to good depths. That result weakens any simple ranking by diameter. Some pistols have more stopping power than rifles. This myth, propagated by movies and video games, survives because some pistols launch heavy projectiles. Historical anecdotes elevate large bores, and energy numbers can look impressive out of context.
It also benefits from conflating near-contact encounters, where almost any service pistol is lethal at extremely short ranges, with the broader envelope of engagement distances. Engineering limits define the category. There are notable exceptions like the Desert Eagle, the LAR Grizzly, the AMT Automags, the automatic Magnum pistols, the Kunin, and the Czech-made FK Brno pistols. But in general, pistols carry short barrels and operate within pressure regimes appropriate to a platform held at arm's length, traits that significantly limit non-Magnum pistol caliber velocities. Designers compensate with heavier bullets or larger frontal area to achieve useful effects at close range. Rifles add barrel length and can tolerate far higher operating pressures, translating into much greater impact velocity and more complex terminal behavior. Terminal effects reflect those categories. Intermediate caliber rifle rounds deliver yaw, fragmentation, or controlled upset at speeds far beyond pistol envelopes. Temporary cavity development and tissue stretch become significant in ways pistols cannot reproduce. Even when pistol bullets expand well and penetrate acceptably, the probability of immediate physiologic incapacitation remains lower than with a centerfire rifle applied to the same target at the same location. A narrow context can confuse the picture. In confined spaces with very short dwell times, a handgun in the hand is more effective than a rifle across the room. Treating a handgun as a handy last resort tool that rewards placement and cadence remains the realistic framing.
Cop Killer Teflon Bullets. A television segment in the early 1980s brought a specialized family of barrier-penetrating handgun rounds into public view and attached an emotionally charged label. The rounds in question emerged in the 1960s from law enforcement practitioners who needed better performance through auto glass and sheet metal. Some versions used very hard cores and a coating to reduce barrel wear. As soft body armor became common in the following decade, the narrative shifted to claim that these coatings allowed bullets to slice through Kevlar and that the ammunition was designed to defeat vests. Sequence and material science disagree. The development focus preceded widespread soft armor adoption. Textile armor behavior depends primarily on impact velocity, sectional density, core hardness, and nose shape. Coatings that reduce bore friction do not magically improve penetration through woven aramids, and can increase fiber grip rather than decrease it. Standard service handgun rounds are what soft armor is designed to stop at rated levels. Centerfire rifle projectiles exceed those specifications routinely. Legislation and market reactions later reinforced the public impression. Bans on specifically named products and the withdrawal of other lines in response to optics made it seem as if unique lethality had been proven. Independent tests recorded occasional vest defeats by particular handgun rounds under specific conditions, but those involved combinations of high velocity, small cross-section, and armor levels not designed for such threats. The practical comprehension goes through standards. NIJ levels describe what soft armor is expected to stop. Level 3A is a handgun rating, not a rifle rating. Rigid rifle plates are a different category. The story that a slick coating turns any handgun round into an armor piercer is a simplification born from headlines. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with fellow firearms enthusiasts who might appreciate the history and detail behind these topics. And if there are other myths or subjects you want us to cover next, please drop them in the comments. Your suggestions genuinely help us make future videos. Thanks for watching.